There is a second way that you can solve percent problems, and that's to use an equation. Now, there's something you need to make sure that you are paying attention to at the top of the page. Percents must be written as a decimal, meaning you're going to move the decimal 2 places to the left when you write it in the equation. If you get a percent for an answer, in order to make it back into a percent, you're going to have to move it 2 places to the right. We'll address that in a little bit, but that is something that you are going to need to pay attention. After I show you this, tomorrow in class you're going to be practicing it. After tomorrow's class, you may pick the way you like the best. We are able to show you either way, so pick the one that you like the best and stick with it. We do not have a preference as to which way you choose. First problem says 12 is 40% of what number? Now notice this time we're going to round to the nearest tenth, and at the top of the page we're told we're going to multiply the whole times the percent as a decimal, and that's going to equal our part. When we read this, we go through and we say 12 is 40% of what number? The whole, we don't know. The percent is a decimal. If it's 40%, to make it a decimal, we go 1, 2 places to the left, and we get 0.4 or 0.40, either one, and it's going to equal our part, which in this case is 12, because remember that whole is the word of, which is what we learned about yesterday, times percent is a decimal is going to equal part, which is. And in this case, we're going to fill in, we don't know what that is. So in order to get our answer, we notice that we're doing multiplication. We do the inverse of multiplication, which is division. We divide 12 by 0.40, and we get that n is equal to 30. So 12 is 40% of 30. This second problem, 15% of what number is 18? 15% of what number is 18? Once again, easiest thing to fill in first is 15%, but in order to make it into the equation, we have to move the decimal point 1, 2 places to the left, and we get 0.15. Is 18, that's your whole amount, or excuse me, that's your part, that's your is. Therefore, it's going to go on the end, and we don't know what the whole amount is. Since we're multiplying n and 0.15, to solve this problem, we have to divide 18 by 0.15. To get that n is going to equal 120. That is what you do when you're looking for the whole amount or the of. These examples are going to be the ones that are when you're looking for the percents. We read it, the third example. 54 is what percent of 90? 54 is what percent of 90? When we go through to solve it, first thing we can plug in is percent. We don't know what the percent is, so we have to put our variable in the second spot. 54 is. That tells us that 54 is our part, and it's going to go after the equal sign. Of 90 tells us that 90 is the whole amount, and it's going to go with the variable. Since we're multiplying 90 times n, to get n by itself, we have to do the inverse of multiplication, and we divide 54 by 90. And we get that n is equal to 0.6. This is not a percent yet. To convert this to a percent, we move the decimal 1, 2 spaces, fill in a 0 to get that n is equal to 60%. Notice that for the first two examples, we had to take the percent, and make it a decimal, whereas in this example, we got a decimal and we had to make it a percent. The fourth example, what percent of 110 is 88? What percent of 110 is 88? We go about filling in what we know. We have no percent sign, Therefore, the variable must go where the percent sign goes. Of 110 tells us that's going to be the total amount, the whole amount, so that's going to go with the variable. Is 88 indicates that's the part, and so it's going to go after the equal sign. Since we're multiplying n and 110, to solve this problem we divide 88 by 110, and we divide it because it's the inverse of multiplication, and we get that n is equal to 0.8. But it is not a percent yet. Right now it's a decimal. To convert it to a percent, we move it 2 spots, fill in a 0, to get that n is equal to 80%. Now the last two examples are asking us to find the part or the is. 5% of 120 is what number? 5% of 120 is what number? Well, we notice we have a 5%, but we know we're going to have to convert it. To convert 5%, we move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left, and we get that it's going to be 0.05. Of 120 tells us that's going to be the whole amount, the total. That's going to go with the percent of 120. Is what number indicates that we are looking for the part, and therefore we're asked for the answer on the other side of the equal sign. All we have to do is multiply 120 times 0.5, and we get that n is equal to 6. Finding the part in this situation is the easiest thing on the equation, as long as you remember to convert your percent to a decimal. What is 6% of 100? What is 6% of 400? Excuse me, what is 6% of 400? Well, we know when we go to solve this, we have to convert 6% to a decimal. We move it 2 spaces to the left to get that we're going to be, the percent is going to be 0.06. Of 400 indicates that that's going to be our whole amount, our total. And where it says what is tells us that our variable is going to go on the other side of the equal sign. So now all we have to do is multiply 400 times 0.06 to give us that n is equal to 24.